Imagine paying $3,000 a month for a kid that isn't even yours. Yeah, Billy's life is basically a tragic sitcom. One minute he's a proud dad, changing diapers and dodging projectile vomit, and the next, he's standing in court watching his ex-wife walk away with their daughter, half his stuff, and a monthly invoice the size of a car payment. Brutal, right? But Billy did what any decent guy would. He kept showing up. 2 days a month, he played the role of super dad, even if that meant wrestling with glitter glue, sitting through chaotic school plays, and pretending he understood TikTok trends. He powered through until one day a DNA test flipped his world upside down. Turns out the kid he'd been loving, fighting for, and financially supporting wasn't even his. Now Billy's stuck in a moral blender. Does he cut ties and move on, or keep being the dad this little girl thinks he is? Before we dive into that wild ride, smash that like button if you think Billy's been done dirty already, and hit subscribe to stick around for the chaos. All right, let's rewind and see how Billy's life turned into a soap opera. Billy met Annie the way most great love stories start, totally by accident and slightly embarrassing. He was standing in line at a coffee shop, trying to order something fancy to impress the barista, but he completely butchered the pronunciation. Can I get a venti soya latticino? Annie, standing behind him, burst out laughing. You mean venti soy latte? She grinned. That smile hit Billy harder than a caffeine rush, and before he knew it, they were swapping phone numbers and texting nonstop. Their relationship moved fast. Too fast, maybe, but Billy didn't care. They laughed at the same dumb jokes, binged the same trashy reality shows, and somehow managed to make grocery shopping feel like a date night. Before long, they were married, and when little Luna came along, Billy felt like he'd hit the jackpot. For a while, life was sweet. Billy was the dad who proudly wore spit up on his shirt like a badge of honor. He was obsessed with Luna, snapping 800 pictures of her drooling in her sleep and telling everyone at work about her first steps like she just won an Olympic gold medal. But things with Annie? Yeah, not so sweet. It started small. Cold replies, random late nights, and Annie suddenly guarding her phone like it held nuclear codes. Then Billy found the text, a flirty message from some guy named Mark that left zero room for confusion. Billy confronted her that night, and things exploded. Voices raised, insults flew, and somewhere in the chaos, Annie hit him with the one sentence that broke him. Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't have to find excitement somewhere else. Ouch. From that point on, their marriage spiraled faster than Billy's credit score. Arguments turned into weeks of icy silence. Dinners became awkward stare-offs where the mashed potatoes got more attention than Billy. Eventually, Annie decided she was done. When the divorce papers landed, Billy felt like someone had kicked him in the ribs. But that wasn't even the worst part. Annie walked away with half of everything: his savings, his car, even the flat-screen TV he'd spent a whole weekend mounting on the wall. And Luna? Annie got full custody. The court decided Billy could only see her 2 days a month, barely enough time to finish a puzzle together, let alone build any real memories. Then came the cherry on this disaster Sunday: $3,000 a month in child support. $3,000 every month. Billy felt like he was being robbed in slow motion. But what could he do? He loved Luna, and if paying up meant she'd have a better life, then fine. He'd bite the bullet. So Billy kept grinding, showing up at work, stacking paychecks just to hand half of it over. Every second weekend, he'd welcome Luna with open arms, back loading her up with ice cream and trying to squeeze a whole month's worth of bonding into 48 hours. Was it exhausting? Yes. Was it painful? Absolutely. But Billy believed it was worth it, because no matter what happened with Annie, Luna was his little girl. Or so he thought. If you're feeling bad for Billy already, drop a like to show some love, and trust me, it's about to get way worse. Billy's life became a brutal cycle of work, pay, repeat. He'd wake up early, pull overtime whenever he could, and still barely keep his head above water. Rent? Paid. Bills? Paid. Child support? Paid. Like clockwork, even if it meant eating instant noodles 5 nights a week. But no matter how broke or burnt out he felt, those 2 days a month with Luna kept him going. Every second weekend, Billy would spring into super dad mode. He'd plan epic days packed with ice cream runs, craft projects, and movie marathons. But here's the thing. Billy's idea of fun dad didn't always match reality. like the time he tried to braid Luna's hair. Billy had watched a 2-minute YouTube tutorial and thought, how hard can it be? Spoiler, very. 2 rubber bands, 4 knots, and what looked like a bird's nest later, Luna stared at herself in the mirror like she was about to file a lawsuit. Dad, she whispered, I look like a mop. Billy tried to play it cool. Nah, you're rocking the, avant-garde look. All the cool kids are doing it. Luna rolled her eyes so hard they nearly left her skull. Then there was the school play. Luna had begged him to come see her debut as Tree Number 3 in some weird forest-themed musical. Billy showed up 30 minutes early, proudly clutching a giant bouquet of flowers like his daughter was about to win an Oscar. When Luna finally appeared, wrapped in brown felt with a cardboard branch duct taped to her arm, Billy lost it. He laughed so hard, he snorted in front of everyone. Dad, Luna hissed from the stage. I'm a tree, not a joke. Billy felt terrible. But later that night, Luna snuggled up next to him on the couch, giggling about how her tree branch flopped around like a noodle. Moments like that made it all worth it, but then came the hard parts, the goodbyes. Every Sunday evening, like clockwork, Annie would show up at Billy's doorstep to take Luna back. Each time, it felt like someone was yanking his heart out with a pair of pliers. I don't want to go, Luna would whisper, clinging to him like her life depended on it. And every time, Billy had to force a smile and say, I know, baby, but I'll see you soon. Except soon felt like forever. Sometimes, Billy wondered if Luna was starting to forget him. He worried Annie was feeding her stories, that Billy didn't care, that he wasn't trying hard enough. It didn't help that every time Luna came over, her clothes were newer, her toys fancier. Billy couldn't compete with Annie's new lifestyle. Some guy named Mark was in the picture now, and from what Billy heard, Mark's wallet was as fat as his ego. Still, Billy never stopped trying. He made personalized bedtime stories, recording them on his phone so Luna could listen whenever she missed him. He wrote her letters, slipped jokes into her backpack, and learned the names of all her weird stuffed animals. When Luna's birthday rolled around, Billy couldn't afford a fancy party, so he built her a DIY treasure hunt around his apartment. He spent 3 hours hiding clues under cushions, inside books, even taped to the ceiling fan. Luna loved it. For 2 days a month, Billy was a hero. But every time she left, reality hit him like a truck. He'd sit in his quiet apartment, staring at her empty cereal bowl, wondering if she'd still remember him a year from now. And through it all, Billy kept paying, month after month, never missing a deadline. Because no matter how hard it got, no matter how much it drained him, he believed Luna was worth it. But soon, Billy would find out that his greatest sacrifice wasn't just exhausting, it had been for nothing. If you're still rooting for Billy, hit that like button. And drop a comment if you've ever tried to braid hair and ended up with a human tumbleweed. I know Billy's not alone in that struggle. All right, brace yourself, because this next part, it's wild. Billy was halfway through a microwaved burrito when his phone rang. It was Annie, which was weird because Annie didn't call. She texted, usually with short, sharp messages like, Luna left her jacket. Payment still pending. Don't forget this weekend. But this time her voice was shaky. There's been an accident, she said. A bad one. Annie had been in a car crash. Billy barely caught the details. Something about a drunk driver, shattered glass, and ambulances, before he heard what mattered most. They need blood, Annie choked out. I'm O negative. Luna's O negative. They need donors, fast. Billy didn't think twice. He grabbed his keys and bolted out the door so fast he forgot to lock it. At the hospital, Billy barely slowed down to check in. Nurses rushed him into a room, slapped a blood pressure cuff on his arm, and got ready to draw. Then one of them paused. Wait. What's your blood type? A positive, Billy answered. The nurse frowned. That's odd. What do you mean odd? Billy asked, stomach tightening. Well, if Luna's O negative and you're A positive, you're not a match. Billy's brain short-circuited. That's impossible, he muttered. She's my daughter. The nurse just gave him that awkward smile doctors use when they're 2 seconds from saying, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. Billy stumbled out of the room in a daze. His mind raced through every biology class he'd ever slept through. Blood types couldn't just glitch. If Luna was O negative, there was no way Billy's A positive genes had anything to do with it. By the time he found Annie's hospital room, his heart was pounding like a drum solo. Annie was groggy, her face bruised, but she cracked one eye open when Billy walked in. "Is Luna okay?" he asked. "She's fine," Annie whispered. "Shaken up, but fine." "Good," Billy nodded. "Now tell me, why the hell does my blood not match hers?" The room went ice cold. Annie's face twisted. Not in confusion, but in guilt. "Billy, I don't know what you mean," she stammered, Billy's jaw clenched. "Don't lie to me." Annie looked away, suddenly very interested in her hospital blanket. "I don't know what I want a DNA test." His voice shook, but this time it wasn't nerves. It was rage. Annie's face crumpled like a paper bag. She didn't argue, didn't protest, just nodded weakly. That silence said more than words ever could. A week later, Billy sat in a sterile office, gripping his knees so tightly his knuckles went white. The DNA test results sat on the desk in front of him, sealed in a crisp white envelope. "Do you want to open it here?" the technician asked. Billy snatched the envelope and ripped it open like it was on fire. His eyes shot straight to the bottom of the page, to the sentence that burned itself into his brain. Probability of paternity, 0%. Billy felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. His vision blurred, his ears rang, 0%. He'd spent 11 years believing Luna was his daughter, $3,000 a month for a child that wasn't his. That was over $400,000, not counting birthday presents, Christmas gifts, or the mountain of toys he kept stuffing into her backpack. And now, it all felt like a joke. When Billy finally stumbled out of the office, he didn't go home. He drove aimlessly for hours, gripping the steering wheel like it might keep him from falling apart. His mind wouldn't stop spinning. All those memories, Luna's first steps, her drawings on his fridge, the way she'd giggle and call him dad like it was the greatest word in the world, they were all crashing into him at once. He thought about the court hearings, the endless checks, the nights he'd cried himself to sleep because he missed her so much. And worst of all, he thought about Luna, the sweet, funny little girl who had no idea her whole life was built on a lie. Billy barely noticed he was crying until his shirt was damp. By the time he pulled into his apartment parking lot, one thought hit him like a freight train. What now? Does he keep paying? Does he walk away? Does he confront Annie? Or just let it go? Billy felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff, and no matter which way he jumped, the landing looked brutal. If you were Billy, what would you do? Let me know in the comments. I need to hear what you guys think. And if you're still riding this emotional roller coaster with me, hit that like button and subscribe because, trust me, this story isn't over yet. Billy spent the next week walking around like a zombie, blank-faced, hollow-eyed, and constantly on the verge of screaming into a pillow. His mind felt like a blender stuck on puree. One minute, he was heartbroken. The next, he was furious. Then he'd sit down, stare at Luna's old drawings on his fridge, and feel like someone had punched him in the gut. 0%, he muttered to himself for the 50th time. 0 freaking percent. On day 7, Billy hit rock bottom, which is why he found himself standing in his bathroom, shirtless, hair a mess, delivering a dramatic monologue to his own reflection. "You're a good man," he told the mirror, pointing at himself like he was in some low-budget soap opera. "You loved that girl. You gave her everything." Mirror Billy didn't seem convinced. "Yeah, well, apparently you're an idiot," Billy shot back at his reflection. "You're out here grinding 60-hour weeks just so Mark the home wrecker take her on Disneyland trips." His reflection didn't blink. "You know what?" Billy jabbed a finger at the mirror again. "Forget them. Cut them off. Block their numbers. No more checks. No more visits. They don't deserve you." For a second, Billy felt powerful, like some broken-hearted warrior reclaiming his pride. But then he thought about Luna, the way her face would light up when he showed up with her favorite snacks, the way she'd cuddle up next to him on movie nights whispering, "Don't fall asleep, Dad, you always fall asleep." The way she called him Dad, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Billy sank onto the bathroom counter, dropping his head into his hands. "She's not even mine," he whispered to no one. "But she's still my kid." And that's when it hit him. Billy realized that Luna didn't know about the DNA test. To her, nothing had changed. He was still Dad, the guy who braided her hair horribly, cheered her on as tree number 3, and wrote her bedtime stories. Yeah, Annie had lied. Yeah, Billy had been played like a cheap guitar. But Luna? She hadn't asked for any of this. So what now? Billy thought about cutting off child support, and honestly, part of him really wanted to. That $3,000 was bleeding him dry, and knowing that Annie had scammed him made it sting even more. But then he pictured Luna opening her backpack at school, realizing Dad's notes weren't there anymore. He imagined her waiting by the window on his weekends, wondering why he never showed up. That's when Billy knew what he had to do. The next weekend, when Annie dropped Luna off, Billy knelt down and hugged her tighter than ever before. "I missed you, baby girl," he said, his voice shaking. "I missed you too, Dad," Luna giggled. "Can we make another treasure hunt?" Billy swallowed hard and smiled. Yeah, we can." He wasn't sure how this mess was going to end, but one thing was certain, Billy wasn't walking away. If you're feeling Billy's struggle, hit that like button, and if you've ever had a full-on soap opera moment in your bathroom, drop a comment. Billy can't be the only one out here arguing with his reflection. And hey, if you're wondering what Billy's going to do next, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. This ride's just getting started. If you were Billy, what would you do? Would you march straight to court and demand justice? Would you stop those $3,000 payments and tell Annie to fend for herself? Or would you keep things quiet for Luna's sake and just try to move on? Smash that like button if you think Billy should take this fight to court, because honestly, that man's wallet deserves a break. But hey, maybe you've got a better idea. Drop a comment and tell me what you'd do if you were in Billy's shoes, because right now, dude's options are looking about as rough as his hair braiding skills. And listen, this story, it's far from over. Billy's about to make a decision that could change everything for him, for Luna, and for Annie. So if you're curious how this wild ride plays out, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for part 2. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.